Hey guys, it's Kai here. I've been automating sales processes for other businesses in the past 5 months, and in this video, I'm going to show you a brief overview of how I made the first ever personal stylist app that boosts sales by using GPT's new image generation model API. And you don't need to know a single line of code to do this. I used the paid version of Lovable to do this as quickly as possible, but I've also got a resource document in below that'll help you do this using the free version as well. As you watch this video, I want you to keep in mind that this technology that I'm using today can be used for literally anything when it comes to boosting sales. So I'm using personal styling as an example, but you could do this for barbershops, hairdressers, car dealerships, you name it. And these are all things that you can do in your business to help you increase your prices and get more money, or even sell to other businesses yourself. So mastering this and knowing about it is really essential. So let's jump in and see how it works. So just a general rundown of the parts of the app that I've built here. There's a general chat interface, which has these main features that I'll go into in a second. There's a specific chat interface, and then there's a library that stores all these interfaces depending on whether or not the user chooses to save these into the chat. So essentially what each of these chats are going to do is they're going to make different requests, which I'll also explain it later on, but requests to the AI image API to bring us back the desired results. Cool. So let me quickly show you around the functionality of the app and the way it works. So first of all, the context of this is pretty much where a personal stylist is helping one of their B2B clients, so one of these executive clients who needs to be dressing accordingly to their brand image. In a consultation, it can be very difficult for them to actually show the actual value that they're providing with these images and ideas that are coming to their head. So by almost making the client visualize these results firsthand is a huge driver, I would say, in conversion rates. And I'll show you a bit of the research that I made around this as well later on. But essentially what this would be the inputs of is a personal stylist saying, hey, look, like, I've got this client here, like, make these sort of images around it. So we can, style preferences is pretty much like the, watch this. So this is the contemporaneous, which is actually a personal stylist term that I learned researching through this. So thanks, Claude. Contemporaneous style. This means like modern and traditional at the same time. So contemporaneous style using earth colors. Emphasis. Let's say dress shirts. Actually, we'll just leave that out. We'll see what happens. And essentially what this is going to do, there's an additional notes thing where I can say like don't add gloves or something, but we're not going to add anything in. Now we're going to upload photos of the client, in this case myself. Look how nice that is, all these photos of me. So essentially what this is going to do now is I can pick a template to kind of like visualize to the AI how I want it to look with the setup and everything. I'll show you what this looks like in the library section here. But all these photos are going to get sent to the AI, and it's going to make a plan accordingly to this, the style preferences, and it has a prompt that helps it to do so in the most concise, not over exaggerating anything, so we're giving it like very rigid guidelines to make sure this is happening properly. So I can just click generate outfits and then wait for the result. And here we've got our result. So the kind of wardrobe colors and style that the AI made for me in this board, all within, just a couple of minutes. Sometimes it does take longer, but that's just the technology with the API requests and everything. And I'll show you guys that in a minute, how it looks. So that's that part. And then we have the event stylist part, which does the exact same thing, except it's specific. It's an AI trained for, or prompted on planning out a specific event. So let me just show you that real quick as well. So as you can see, we've actually generated a pretty good representation of my input here, which was quite vague, honestly, considering a personal stylist will talk about the whole brand image of this person. but it took in like the jacket style, the earth tones, the winter holiday, and it was able to generate all of like these the mood board, right? That it would take sometimes a few days for someone to get back to their client with, and looks pretty similar to me. Takes in like my body composition quite well, and so this is a very strong point to actually leverage in the market and drive more sales. I'm going to show you again this research that I made that just opens up your eye to how powerful this technology is even more. But essentially, I took a day and a half to make this whole app, and I'm not even a personal stylist professional. Again, I just looked at this research, talking about the pain points of a personal stylist, which is an idea that I had in my head. As soon as the GPT image generation actually came out, I thought that for these use cases where you need to actually visualize all of these like results into the client's head before they happen, it's quite important to have this communication and to persuade them to buy your service, right? So it says actually here, the absence of a tangible before and after to showcase upfront presents a significant hurdle for personal specialists, requiring them to master the art of communication and trust building to effectively convey their value and convert prospective clients into satisfied customers. And so it goes on to talk about like this being a trust thing as well. By not having enough trust in this consultant or personal stylist, they aren't as inclined to buy. And all of these problems get solved by this one simple solution. And so I researched again. This is all on Gemini's deep research, which did an amazing job. So the salary of the average personal stylist in the US, and it talks about like different salon owners, depending on where they are located. And so it said like there's a wide range, right, of stylists that can go up to $100,000 benchmark per year, depending on the business owner. And so I asked Gemini, based on all this research up here, how much you think that the solution can add on to a revenue with all of this context. So I attached the two documents there, and it returned me with something approximately from 10 to 30%. But that's basically what made me like go out and say, okay, I'm making this. It's an amazing tool. I need you guys to see it, because if you can add like 30% by showing the final results in an interface as simple as this, that took me only a couple of days to make, then that's a pretty powerful thing. So now let's just go on and talk about how you guys can actually manage to do this yourselves. And it's not as complex as you think, although all of this does look scary and you think, oh no, code. There's only a few key topics and ideas that you need to get your head around before you actually start making these yourselves, because the tools that we're using actually cut a huge chunk of time in terms and knowledge, by not knowing how to code and that sort of stuff. It helps us a lot to actually make the solution. So what this is the OpenAI platform where you can essentially call different functions using the API, an API request. And all that is going using the exact same functionality that you use on ChatGPT, but you're using it from external sources. So in my case, I used it from this app to call this endpoint here, which I'll go into in a second, to generate these images. And what this is, the way this works is ChatGPT has actually broken down all of these abilities that the image generation can do. So when you go on ChatGPT and you say, create this image, do this, do this, do this, it does it all in one interface. But the way they've actually positioned the API here is to distinguish between these different endpoints or these different functions, so that you can do different things depending on how you're using the external request. So in this case, you can see that we can edit images using the post request. So we're posting data to an endpoint, in this case OpenAI platform, to generate images. Now if you wanted to create one from scratch, we wouldn't be using this one. If you wanted to create one from scratch, we'd be going into create image, which is this point. And notice how every time I change the endpoint, the requirements for the request also change. So of course, if we want to edit an image, we'd need to add different images for it to edit. And so we have to understand the API before we can do anything else. Now, to make something same use case as I did, we have to look at the edits function or endpoint and understand that the image is a requirement. So you must add an image for the AI to access to then edit. The prompt is the second required component, which is essentially what you're going to be telling the AI to do. So in my case, I wanted to do it very precisely. I wanted the AI to act accurately at all times. And so what I used, and again, you don't need to know how to prompt for this, but I use this tool called the Perfect Prompt Writer. And it's essentially where you can make these, it's essentially for agents, right? But to make good prompts, you can go into this, oh, it's not loading. Okay, there we go. You can go into the Perfect Prompt Writer and then just write down your requirements, and it gives you a prompt that you can actually put into this API request here, this part of the request. And in the end, it'll look something like this. So this is my first message to the Lovable. This is Lovable, and it codes everything for you. So this is all the code that it made for me, literally on the fly as I asked it to do things. So if you look at all these different components of the app, Lovable did all of this. I did not do anything. Here you go. So all of this was all Lovable. And if you go back to my first message here, which is a long way up, so I actually ran into a few troubles doing this, but everything that I'm about to tell you will help you do this just on the free plan as well. Okay, so here it is. I'm giving Lovable the functionality of the app, the way it works, the API key that you need in order for your platform to be talking to the OpenAI platform for you to actually make these image generations. And actually, I should say, before you do any of this, the API can be found just here. So if you go settings and then API keys, you can create a new key. The reason I don't have one is because I use it on a different account. But that's one requirement to do this from the OpenAI end of things. And the second thing you need to do is you need to go over here to general, and then you need to verify your organization in order to actually use the image capabilities of it. Now, once you've done that, it takes about 30 minutes, and then you're ready to go to actually make these requests, right? So then you give the endpoint, which I actually didn't do here. Oh, no, I did. So I made the wrong endpoint because I didn't have the full idea of what the app was going to be at the time, and eventually I changed it. So what this could have been, the example request, was to the OpenAI edits endpoint. So that's what you would do there. And then the bearer here, so the OpenAI API key is what you give to the, what you get from this, from doing the API keys here. Once you've done those two things, you can essentially start making these different requests. And then all of this here, I didn't do myself. You can ask ChatGPT to simply go like this. So you copy it, or you can actually just say, go to ChatGPT itself and then ask, look at the Open AI image generation API and tell me request for editing images. Cool. And then you've got this example curl command here is what you're going to copy, and then you can paste it into your Lovable there. Now, the prompt part of this is what's going to be your, what's going to come from here. So your Perfect Prompt Writer. And then this is the number of photos that you're going to take. And if you go back to the documentation, the default size of the image is always going to be 1024 by 1024. But if you want a portrait like I just showed you on that example, you need to go 1536 by 24. And then everything else you can kind of leave as it is. Again, there's that required data that you need to put in, which is the image and the prompt, and everything else you kind of, it's optional, so it also makes it easier for you to change around the things that you want to do. One of the things that I thought was very crucial for me when making this was making sure that I'm making different requests for the different abilities that I want to give to my application. So you can see here, as I've started to go deeper and deeper into the functionalities of the app, there's a general outfits part, and then there's the event styling part. Now, what these were doing before is they were using the same API request, although despite them having sorry, I'm getting a call. So although these functionalities were pretty similar in terms of these requests, the prompt for them was different. So then I had to make sure that one was specified to one function, which made one API request, and the other one made a different API request using a different prompt. So these were two separate API requests that I had to make to generate the same sort of like editing images ability. But again, Lovable does most of the managing for you, and if at any point you run into like an error, so it says like the code errored because maybe you made a wrong request or there was an error on the Lovable side of things, then all you need to do is click fix error. It's just like a button like this one that you can click, and from there it keeps going. And so all this is literally just me refining the prompt, asking it to do different things. But the main cutting, there you go. So there's a good example. So when there's an unsuccessful build, you can just click that, and then you could click try to fix. But all this is refining the way that I wanted to pass on data to the AI, and you can avoid all these things by making sure you stick to this sort of base. Where is it? This base request here. So if all you need to tell Lovable is that, give it your API, give all these dimensions, and once you do that, then you're all up and running to work with Lovable. What you can also do to make sure that as you're adding on all these different messages to it is Lovable has a knowledge section where you can put, so for example, let me just show you, make sure that Lovable the main task that it's meant to do. So another problem that I had is I kept making different messages and requests to it, and it would eventually forget the past request around the API structure of the app. So it would just completely start over, and I didn't want it to do that. So then I had to come over here and put in this knowledge, which I got from ChatGPT. I've got these parameters that I wanted to keep the same, and I said never change the endpoint or make any edits to the actual API structure. And then from then on, it actually started working. And if you do that as soon as you start your build, then you save a lot of trouble, and you have avoid a lot of mistakes. But aside from that, that's pretty much all that you need to do. I'm going to leave this on my board here for you to have a look at as well, just to see what the structure of my app was, the different parts, and the actual walkthrough on the user's part, which helped me to plan out and make this the build at a starting point. And once you kind of take in those three components, so knowing the API request that you only have to make once, putting it into Lovable so you actually know how to use the tool while the tool doesn't forget what the main task that it is meant to do, then this sort of thing, like, it only comes down to you and like what you want to build essentially. And once you've done all those things, you can make some pretty cool stuff. And if you even do some research behind it and start marketing this, like the solutions that you make, who knows, maybe you can even start making more money for yourself, or maybe even your own business, using these sort of solutions. So that's it for the video today. If you think that there's anything that I needed to go over more in detail, then let me know. I chose to just go over like the core functionalities and the core principles of making like anything with Lovable and this new feature with ChatGPT. And If you think that it was a good video, then please let me know as well. I'd love to know. If you're a business owner wanting to boost your own sales, and similar to this, it's kind of like what I do for a living. So if you're a personal stylist, I got a lot to offer you. But if you are a business owner and you want to implement solutions like that into your own business, then feel free to let me know, reach out. And that's it for the video. Thanks for watching.